Someone Better by I_am_Ellie on AO3. Episode 6, Chapter 5. Please, don't make me look. Shota's phone rang just as they walked through the front door. Hizashi was holding the child, Izuku, braced on his hip, little head leaning against his shoulder. His hair was shorter, obviously so, but it still looked nice. In Hisashi's other hand, he held a large cup of soda that he had gotten from the fast food place they had just gotten back from. Shota raised an eyebrow. Who's calling you? People never call you. Shota thought he should be offended, but it was true. The only person who could reasonably be expected to call him was Nemuri, and she hardly did because she knew he didn't like talking on the phone. He checked the number. It was unknown, but it wasn't marked as spam. He sighed before answering. Shouta Aizawa. Yes, hello, Mr. Aizawa. A woman on the other side of the line said. Yes. This is Izuku's social worker. I just called to check in and ask some questions. All right. How is he settling in? Fine. He just got a haircut. And he likes the cat. That's good. That's great. Have you gotten him everything he needs? We arranged his room. He has a bed, a dresser, and an armory. He has lots of toys. That was Hisashi's doing. Is that all? Not quite, the woman said, cheerfully. Has Izuku attended his mother's funeral yet? No. Shota said. I thought that had already taken place. Mr. Aizawa, Izuku's mother died the day before he came to live with you. The woman said. It was your job to arrange the funeral, as her remaining living next of kin. Oh. Shota thought for a moment. I don't know how to do that. I'll give you some numbers to call to help you out. The woman said easily. She listed off a few numbers for funeral homes, and Shota quickly wrote them down. Is that all? Shota asked. I have to get going. I'm busy, and I'm already behind schedule. Yes, Mr. Aizawa. That's all I wanted to know, the woman said. I'll be going to your house soon, though, to check up on Izuku personally. It's protocol. I'm aware. Shota said. Goodbye. He hung the phone, slipping it back into his pocket. I have to plan a funeral, he informed Hizashi. I'm not sure how to do that, but I have the phone numbers now. That's good, Hizashi said quietly. Carefully easing Izuku down and laying him on the couch, he took a blanket from the back of the couch and covered him with it. I'll help you in any way I can. I appreciate it, Shota said. He glanced at the clock on the wall. I'll be late for my shift. Better hurry, Hizashi said. Hizashi pulled out his hero costume, which was really just a black tracksuit and his capture weapon, before putting his goggles on. Hizashi hugged him, like he always did before one of them had to shift. Be safe, and text me if you won't be able to come home before dinner, so I can put it in the fridge for you. Shota nodded, leaving the apartment after quietly easing the door shut behind him. As soon as he was out of the apartment building, he took to an alley, and he climbed up a roof. When Shota returned home, hours later, adrenaline still thrumming through his veins, and sporting a few scrapes and bruises from a scuffle with a robber, Hizashi and Izuku were watching a movie on the couch. There was a bowl of popcorn sitting between them. His shoulders slumped as soon as he got inside into the apartment, and his arms felt like lead as he lifted the heavy capture weapon from his shoulders and hung it up. Hi, Unky Show, Izuku said from the couch. Hizashi called. Hey, babe. At around the same time. Hello, child, Shota said, collapsing on the couch next to Hizashi. The man in question started playing with his hair. Rough patrol? Hizashi asked. Tired. I'll be fine. I'm just very tired. You should probably go back and try to get some sleep, Hizashi said. It felt like he was braiding a strand of his hair. You've got a busy day tomorrow. Right. He was supposed to plan a funeral. That was happening. Shota said. slowly standing up from the couch. Your dinner's in the fridge. I'm not hungry. Lunch for tomorrow, then? Shouta walked towards the hallway that held all the bedrooms before stopping just at the entrance. He checked his watch. 7:30. Probably too early to send the kid to bed. And the kid's bedtime was at 8. And Hisashi's shift started around 30 minutes after that. He was so tired. Child, Shouta said. Izuku turned around on the couch to look at him. It's almost your bedtime. He had to fight back a yawn. Why don't you go get ready for bed, and I'll read you something. Izuku frowned slightly. But me and Unkisho are watching a movie. Sleep is important, especially for cabbages. Hizashi snorted, and Izuku just looked even more confused at the ever-present nickname. Bedtime. Hizashi has a shift soon, and his hair alone takes an inordinary amount of time to fix. Hizashi pouted, clearly offended. What's inordinary mean? Izuku asked, sounding out the word slowly. Unusual. An unusual amount of time. He paused for a moment. Izuku still looked confused. He wasn't sure how to explain this to a child Izuku's age. Large. It takes a large amount of time to comb and style. Izuku nodded. Okay, Izuku said. Well, this movie takes an unordinary amount of time to finish, so we gotta wait till later for bedtime. He regretted teaching this child new words already. Nice try. Not happening. Come on, kid. Izuku pouted sadly, shuffling down from the couch and into the bathroom. Shouta turned to Hizashi. Does he need help brushing his teeth? Hizashi shrugged helplessly. He'd seen the child brushing his teeth on his own before, of course, but he was only 5 years old, and you were supposed to brush your teeth for 2 minutes and floss. And he wasn't sure if someone the cabbage age could do that. Maybe he should set up a timer. Izuku ran out of the bathroom with toothpaste on his chin and a onesie on. All done, he chirped. Shouta nodded, leading the child to his bedroom before heading to his own to grab another children's book from Hisashi's collection. This time, he chose one about dragons. He didn't make the same mistake of leaning against the child's headboard this time. Instead, he sat on the other side of the bed and opened the book on his lap. Izuku scooted over and leaned against his shoulder so he could look at the pictures. The giant purple dragon flew over the bright blue sky, jets of rain, fire shooting from his mouth. Shouta was halfway through the book when he felt Izuku began to get heavier and heavier against his shoulder. When he glanced over at the child, his eyes were steadily trying to slip shut while he tried to keep a grasp of consciousness. Shouta glanced at his watch. 7:50. At least he'd be in bed, on time. Shouta fought back another yawn, and continued to read to the sleepy child. Izuku started snoring quietly, just as his watch ticked from 7:59 to 8, and Shouta slowly eased the book close. He wasn't sure how to get the child off his shoulder. He put his hand between the child's head and his shoulder and pushed outwards. The child immediately flopped to his side and falling onto his pillow. Shouta shrugged. He fell on the pillow. He'd be probably fine. He stood up and grabbed the child's blanket, tucking it around his shoulders, and turned his head to the side so it wasn't quite so face planted on the pillow. He wouldn't want the child to suffocate. His feet dragged against the carpeted floor as he headed to his and Hisashi's bedroom. Hisashi was in front of the mirror, checking his hair and putting on his leather jacket. His sunglasses were hooked to his shirt. Hey, babe, Hisashi said, not looking away from the mirror. Shouta made a vague sound in response that didn't sound like any recognizable human language. Easy go down easy. Mm-hmm. He liked the book? Mm-hmm. Shouta flopped down on the bed, not bothering to change out of his tracksuit. Pajamas show you can't sleep in your clothes. Nah. Hisashi chuckled. He walked over and kissed Shota's forehead, like he always did, unclipping his sunglasses from his shirt. Sleep well, sweetheart. Be safe. Shouta murmured, already slipping to sleep. Shouta murmured, already slipping to sleep, when the door to their bedroom closed behind Hizashi. Yes, I need to purchase a casket and a lot. I also need to rent out a place for a funeral home. Yes. How do I do that? No, I called because I needed help with that. A social worker gave me your number. Yes, Child Protective Services. I don't have that much. No, I don't have insurance. Sir, I'm 20. I don't see the point of getting insurance yet. No, I'm not. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll get insurance. But do you have anything that won't cost 980,000 yen? Hello? Sir. He looked at the phone. He hung up on him. Ugh. He ran a hand through his hair, breathing in deeply. Of course. You are right, Sho. Hisashi called from the couch, where he and Izuku were playing with Takara. Yes, I'm fine. Hands on elbows. How much do we have in our bank account? Enough to cover our bills until our next payment from the agency. Why? The average price for a funeral is 900,000 yen. We do not have that much money to spare, and we have rent to pay, and... He took a deep breath. Fingers on elbows. Tap, tap, tap. Zuku, can you go play with Takara in the room for a few minutes, please? Hisashi asked. Izuku nodded, picking the large cat up, and walked towards his bedroom. Okay, breathe. It's gonna be fine. Just sit down. We'll figure this out. Did Inko have any money set aside for final expenses? She was 31, Sashi. She wasn't thinking about her funeral. He rubbed a hand over his face. We've barely started at the agency, Hisashi. We don't have enough for this. We'll figure this out, okay? We could take out longer patrols or do 2 patrols a day or... That might have been possible before, but how are we supposed to do that with cabbage? Chances are those shifts are going to overlap. We could go for cremation. That might be cheaper. Hell, it might even be required in our area for all we know. Hisashi, if it's not required, we're not going to cremate my sister just because it's the cheaper option. I don't see any other way we could do this. Could take out a loan. Shona noted. Yeah, and be in debt? That's not going to work. Besides, Izuku has to go to school soon, and we'll have to deal with the expenses from that. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, we could take out a loan and get side jobs, doing something else, along with hero work. Nemuri would probably be alright with watching the kid, right? Probably. Hisashi said. He tapped his foot. Okay, we could do that. Just until we got the money covered. Okay, that'll work. Can you call the place? Shouta asked. What? Why? Would I even be allowed? She was your sister, Sho. My phone manners are not the best. The man on the phone hung up on me after I lost my patience. You got impatient with the funeral director. Yes, he kept calling me young man and telling me to get life insurance. I see. Hisashi managed to keep a straight face for a solid 5 seconds before it cracked, and he let out a single, booming laugh that made the plates in the cabinets rattle. Should have activated his quirk just before anything could shatter. I'm sorry, it's just... What's so funny? Nothing. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Just give me the phone. I'll redial the funeral director. Hisashi dissolved into crackles again. God, I'm so sorry, Sho. I really shouldn't be laughing. It's not decent. Shoulda gave a long, suffering sigh. Just call the police, please. It took far too long and far too much paperwork to get a loan from the bank, and even then, they were only able to cover about half of the costs. That, along with the added expenses such as suits, the rent of the place, bills, Izuku's school uniform, they'll have to keep a close eye on their money for a while. They ended up getting a simple wooden coffin for Inko, both because it was cheaper, and because, from what Shota remembered of his older sister, the woman probably wouldn't want anything elaborate. Then they had had a list of people Inko was close to out of Izuku, which provided difficult, since he couldn't remember a lot of their names. The main people he listed were the Bakugo family, Izuku's father, and Shota wasn't sure how he was going to deal with that, and a few work associates. Then they'll have to worry about where to have the funeral. He knew that Inko, and most of his family, had been Christian, but he'd never really followed the religion strictly, and he'd never gotten the chance to get into the habit of following the religion, or any other religion at all, really. Because of the drift between him and his parents, he considered himself to be atheist. But he didn't want to disrespect Inko, so he decided to try and find a church that would be willing to hold the funeral and post and officiate. Then he had to worry about getting Izuku his suit. He and Hisashi's suit from his parents' funerals were still in good condition, as they weren't used often. But Izuku didn't have one, and once they told Izuku why he needed a new suit, the tailor could hardly take the boy's measurements because he was crying so hard. They had to stop quite frequently, so Hizashi, because Shota didn't know how to deal with crying adults, much less a crying child, could comfort the boy. They ended up buying a white button up, a black tie, plain black slacks, and a suit vest. Then he and Hizashi had to worry about getting invitations to people, since they didn't know any of their addresses, and Izuku, a 5-year-old boy, couldn't remember them. So they spent hours poring over the phone book, looking for people's names so they could call them. And when they did find them, half were too busy crying for Shota and Hizashi to get a word in about where the funeral would be held. Then the other half had yelled at them. And that, along with everything else, was so stressful it had made Shota want to go to his bedroom and hide under a weighted blanket and sleep for 100 years. Eventually, Hizashi had taken over the phone calls for both of them, and Shota had finished up everything else. And that was perfectly fine with Shota. Maybe Hizashi, being a pro hero who was in the public eye a lot, was just more useful to dealing with people than Shota was. They ended up finishing everything the night before the funeral was scheduled. Dinner was a subdued affair. Hizashi had tried to make quiet conversation with Izuku at first, but the boy hadn't responded, and Hizashi had fallen into an awkward silence. They all went to bed early that night, even Hizashi taking off patrol for the day. Shota had read to Izuku a story about a princess locked in a tower, and Hizashi had run a hand over Izuku's hair as he fell asleep. It had taken far too long to fall asleep that night. Usually, when Hizashi didn't have a shift and was in bed with him when he was falling asleep, usually on the weekends, it was easy to fall asleep. But it had been difficult that night. Hizashi liked to sleep close to him at night, and that usually consisted of using Hisashi's arm as a pillow while Hizashi held him close. And he couldn't stop tossing and turning, so he knew that Hizashi was just as awake as he was. "I can't sleep," he said in defeat. "I noticed," Hizashi replied, dryly. "Are you nervous?" "No," Shota said. He paused for a moment, and Hizashi waited patiently. "Yes, maybe, I don't know." "Talk me through it, Sho." Shota noted. "I haven't seen her in a while." Hizashi hummed. "Last time I saw her I was 18, at my parents' funeral, and now I'm going to see her again, at another funeral, but it's hers. I haven't seen her in years, and when I finally do, she's not really there. Never really knew her. I don't know how much she changed in the 11 years or so she was gone, and she might have been an entirely different person for all I know, and I can't remember much of her from when she was around, but because she was family, and she was the only person in my family that liked me, that loved me, even though I'm estranged, and now she's dead. The last person in my family who didn't hate me is dead. I don't know how to feel about that. I'm trying to figure it out." "You're wrong," Hisashi said. Shota glanced up. What? You're wrong, Hizashi said simply. You're very, very wrong. How so? Shouta asked, dryly. Who do you think Izuku is? A neighbor? Hizashi asked. He is your family, and he doesn't think you're strange. Or if he does, he doesn't automatically dislike you for it. And family isn't just the people you're related to. Forgive me if I'm overstepping here, but I'd like to admit that me and Nemuri are your family too. And we still love you. And we don't think you're strange. Shouta raised a disbelieving eyebrow. Okay, you're a little odd, but that's not a bad thing. Everyone's a little weird, Sho. That's true. We love you, Shouta, Hizashi said. Me and Nemuri and... Hizashi cleared his throat. And I think Izuku does too. Or he cares about you at the least. Okay, Shouta said. He was quiet for a moment. I appreciate it, but I still probably won't get much sleep. Yeah, I figured as much. The next morning, Shouta shaved off his beard and tied back his hair into a loose knot. Loose strands of hair fell into his face from his bangs, like they always did, and he pinned them back with cat clips. They were mostly hidden by his hair and ears, but he knew they were there, and that was surprisingly comforting. He changed into a suit and helped Izuku change into his own, buttoning up his shirt and trying his tie before helping him get the vest over his head. He placed a towel over his shoulders and grabbed the spray bottle and a little hairspray. He sprayed the boy's hair until it was damp before combing it back, close to his head, being careful not to pull too much. Then he quickly attacked it with the hairspray before it could dry and return to its original poofiness, trying not to wince at the sharp smell. When he got back into the living room, Hizashi was already ready. Scrolling through his phone, he was wearing a charcoal gray suit with a black tie and a navy tie, as opposed to Shota's tieless black suit and a red lapel. His hair was in a bun, loose strands pulling out down his back and shoulders. My collar's weird, Izuku said. Shouta glanced at him. Is it stiff? Mm-hmm, Izuku said, sniffling as he fidgeted with it. And the tie is hurting me. I can't help with the collar, but I'll loosen the tie, Shouta said, crouching down to adjust the tie accordingly. Better, Cabbage? Izuku nodded, smiling gratefully, though his eyes were still teary. Hizashi crouched down by his Shouta. Are you ready to do this? Hizashi murmured to the boy. It's okay if you say no. We'll figure something out. Izuku sniffled. I'm scared, the boy admitted. I miss my mommy, and I don't want her to get buried. I know, baby, Hizashi said. That's just the way life played out. I know it's not fair. I'm so sorry, Izu. A few tears spilled out of Izuku's eyes, and Hizashi pulled a handkerchief out of his suit pocket, dabbing at them. I want to go say bye to mommy, Izuku said, determination clear in his voice, even if the tears still rained down. You're a very brave boy, Hizashi said. Me and Uncle Sho are very proud of you, Izuku. Not brave, Izuku said. If I was brave, I wouldn't be scared. Being brave isn't about not being scared, Shouta said. To be brave is to be courageous, and to be courageous is to do something even if it makes you mad or sad or if it hurts you. Does it hurt? Yes, Izuku said. He tapped his chest. It hurts here. He tapped his head. And here. Hizashi looked like he was about to start crying. But you're doing it anyways, Shouta said. That's why you're brave, okay? A fresh wave of tears fell, but Izuku fixed his jaw and met his gaze head on. Okay. The drive to the church was an hour long, and they still had 2 hours and 30 minutes until it started. Izuku fell asleep in his car seat on the way there, like he always did when they had to go on long drives. You're good with him, Hizashi noted. I'm not. Shouta stated. I know nothing about children. I have no experience with children. I have no idea how children are supposed to be raised, or how to talk to them. I'm just trying my best, and using logic and reason as I go. Well, your logic and reasoning is certainly helping him. Hizashi said. Shouta shrugged. I'm proud of you too, you know. Shouta felt his ears go red, and he was thankful they were hidden by his hair. Be quiet so I can drive. The church, thankfully, wasn't very crowded when they got there, save for a little boy and his family, and a few other people. Izuku waved to the little boy, who had very spiky hair and looked like a very angry child, who looked to a similar-looking woman, whose back was to the boy, before waving back tentatively. They sat in the pew in the back. A cross sat at the front of the room, and an image of Jesus was carved into it. Should have felt like its eyes were digging into him, and he tried not to look at it. The funeral went about as well as could be expected. The woman with spiky hair came forward to speak, which Shouta hadn't been expecting or planning, but he preferred her talking about the deceased than him having to. She probably knew her better. The woman talked about how lovely of a woman Inko had been, her kindness, and her motherly nature. She ended it by saying she missed her dearly, and Shouta heard Izuku choke on a sob next to him. When the pastor called for everyone to say goodbye to Inko, and everyone started walking towards her casket, Izuku turned quickly and hid his face in his side, shoulders shaking. I don't want to look, Unky. I don't want to look. Please don't make me look. I don't want to see it again. You don't have to look, Shouta said, rubbing the boy's back awkwardly. Izuku, Hizashi said upon seeing his partner's helplessness expression. Do you want to leave now and head to the cemetery? Izuku sobbed and nodded. They left the building quickly, Hizashi carrying Izuku to the car and strapping him into the car seat. Shouta passed the child a bottle of water from the front as they started driving, and the child didn't fall asleep this time. Instead, watched the world pass by outside the window as tears streamed down his face. They pulled into the cemetery and waited for those from the funeral to arrive. When they did, they got out of the car. Hizashi unbuckling Izuku from the back. Izuku held on to Hisashi's pant legs as they headed towards the freshly dug funeral plot, and he had one hand in Shota's belt loop. Izuku stared at the ground as they lowered the casket into the ground, and Shouta stared at the sky. He remembered years ago staring at the sky with his sister from rooftops while they waited for villain fights to fall into their laps. He missed that Inko. The crowd disappeared as the pastor finishes his prayer. A tall woman with spiky hair walked towards them. You're Inko's brother, she said, by way of greeting. She never mentioned you. She wouldn't have. I see. She turned to Izuku. I don't like that kid, but you better take care of him. Her voice had a threatening tone to it. She looked at Izuku, and her face was that of distaste, before slowly softening. And I'm sorry about your mother, Izuku. Izuku nodded. That's all I wanted to say. She marched away. Shouta stared after her. A boy cleared his throat. He looked down, the angry-looking boy. I don't like Deku either, he proclaimed, but he didn't seem too sure of himself. But be nice to him, please. He nodded, looked at Izuku. I miss you, Kachan, Izuku said. Will you go to the park with me again? With me and Unki Sho and Unki Hizashi? You live very far away, but... I can't, nerd, the boy said. She won't... He visibly cut himself off. I'm... sorry about Auntie. He looked back up at Shouta again, this time threateningly. Remember what I said. Be nice to Deku, and take care of him like Mom said to. He marched away, in a way that was eerily similar to how his mother had. You have interesting... Hizashi hesitated for a moment. Friends, Izuku. Izuku sniffled. Mm-hmm. Come on, listener, let's get you home. We'll get ice cream on the way home. Shouta said, do you want ice cream? Yes, please. We'll get you a sundae then. Alright, I just wanted to say one thing before we go on to the next notes. So there was something that I kind of forgot to mention, which is the everlasting effects that Izuku could get from this grief and from this traumatic event, which is attachment issues, which then fester into his, obviously, people-pleasing tendencies, and that people-pleasing tendencies festers into his attachment issues, and it's an endless cycle. Yeah, there you go. First thing I want to talk about is, yeah, funerals suck. Not just because they're sad, but because they cost a lot. A lot. It's ridiculous. It really is. Okay. So, the main things that I want to talk about in this chapter specifically, is Mitsuki, Bakugo, a little bit of Izuku, and a little bit of, Shouta and Hisashi's relationship. So we're gonna start with Mitsuki and Bakugo. I don't like Mitsuki. That's my notes on Mitsuki. I don't like her. I don't. I really don't. Next, Bakugo. I feel like in this fanfic it is very, very much implied that Bakugo doesn't actually hate Izuku and doesn't actually think Izuku is worthless or whatever because of the quirk thing, right? Which then falls under the whole, sometimes some behavior is learned behavior, right? So obviously his mother is telling Bakugo that he can't be friends with Izuku, that Izuku is worthless, that Izuku blah, 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 right? Because clearly Mitsuki doesn't like Izuku, right? And that translates with Bakugo mimicking this with Izuku. It's why Izuku seems to mimic a lot of his mother, right? Children seem to mimic their parents, like both parents most of the time, right? And then they end up mimicking things they see online, things they see IRL, things they see in media. Kids, especially at the age of 5, they're mimicking everything they see. That's how they learn. They mimic, and what their parents tell them, what their what people around them tell them, stuff like that. They compartmentalize that, and that starts to form that person. It starts to form who they are. It starts to form their personality, their stuff, right? Which is, So Bakugo definitely seems to be, in this fanfic, he didn't choose to hate Izuku. It just is what he was made to do. Which doesn't make his behavior when he's 15 any better, but maybe it doesn't happen in this fanfic. But we'll never know because it's uncontinued and that part of that area is unfilled. So, yeah. We'll never know that. Alright, next one, I want to talk a little bit about Hizashi and Shouta's relationship. I find it so sweet. Obviously, they're struggling financially, and I hope I did that argument justice, because they were kind of having an argument, things were tense, they were projecting their anger, or not projecting, but they were directing their anger towards each other when it wasn't directed towards each other. It was directed at the situation, but they didn't have anywhere else to direct it, so they directed it towards each other. But they calmed down and they talked it through. And you know what I loved is this one part that Hizashi says, where it's like, you're wrong, you have family. Izuku's not just like a neighbor, right? He's your family. And I like to think that, me and Nemuri are your family. And, and all that stuff, and that is so sweet. And I very much love how Aizawa's like, I'm weird, right? I'm weird, and that's what drove people away. And Hisashi's like, no, Sho, you're not. And obviously Shota's like, really you're gonna sit there and lie to me? And Hisashi's like, okay, maybe you are, but we're all a little bit weird. So I feel like that was sweet. That was like a way of saying like, okay, yes, you are quote unquote weird. I wouldn't say that Hizashi knows that, Aizawa has autism, but like, let's say for a perspective of a neurotypical with a neurodivergent, it's like, yes, you're quote unquote weird, but we're all weird. And in the sense, yes, we are all weird. As much as you neurotypicals think that you're quote unquote normal, no, you're not. You have your weird perks too. Don't even. And, just because someone is neurodivergent doesn't mean that they're quote-unquote weird. Having neurodivergency is not something that is abnormal or weird, right? It's just a different way of living. It's like saying this religion is weird because it isn't like my religion. That is stupid. That is super stupid. They just have a different religion, a different way of viewing, faith and spirituality and, gods or God, stuff like that, which I love. Their relationship is really sweet, and I can't mention this enough. I love this fan fiction so much for how they're portrayed. It is so sweet, and I'm so happy to be doing this. Okay. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord is down in the description, and my socials. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.